Hello everybody and welcome to today's review of Disney's Snow White. It is the new film directed by Marc Webb starring Rachel Zegler and Gal Gadot. This is yet again another remake of a Disney animated classic. For those of you who are not familiar with the film, it centers on the Grimm's fairy tale of Snow White, a young princess who runs away from her evil stepmother the queen when she tries to have her killed. She takes refuge in the cottage of 7 dwarfs, but then she falls into a sleep-like death after biting into a poisoned apple. Now, the original 1937 film holds a special place in my heart. Not only did that film bring a lot of laughter and joy, but it was also revolutionary for its time. And even if you're not into this sort of story, you cannot help but admire the artistry in this film. Now, I'll be honest with you, I was ready to hate this film when they announced that they were making it. After all, Disney does not have a good track record when it comes to remaking their own property. They're always adding a lot more elements to the film that only tarnishes the story and does absolutely nothing to recapture the magic of the original film. And unfortunately, it's the same with this film. But forget production hell, this film has been in PR hell for the last couple of years or so. And that's mainly due to criticisms drawn from certain casting or creative decisions that were made in the film, as well as certain political statements that were made by the film's 2 main leads. Now, everyone's entitled to their opinion, and whatever opinions that were made publicly, I'm not going to hold the film against that. I will try to judge this film as objectively as I can. However, there were certain things that happened behind the scenes that made it unavoidable to hinder my judgment on this film. And I will explain why in a few moments. But first, let's talk about Rachel Zegler. She was criticized for being the wrong choice to play Snow White due to her ethnicity. Originally, the character was described as having skin white as snow, and given the fact that Rachel Zegler is a Latina, she really doesn't fit the bill in terms of that. However, to make up for that, the film did a good job at explaining why she was named Snow White, and it worked. But overall, I had no issue with Rachel being cast as Snow White at all. She has demonstrated a lot of acting prowess in films like The Hunger Games or West Side Story. There was no doubt in my mind that she could pull off this role, and she is pretty damn good in this film. In fact, she is the best part of this film. She embodies the virtues of Snow White in terms of a compassionate young woman, and the film does give the character of Snow White a challenge. She is trying to build her self-confidence in order to become the leader that she is meant to be. After all, she is a princess, and so she is going to be queen one day. I will never fault Rachel Zegler for the failure that is this movie, and unfortunately, it is a failure. If I could describe this film in one word, it would be messy. It's the writing. There were just so many elements added to the characters and to the plot that just really made no sense. At most, I figured that they were added in for spectacle. For example, the evil queen is given magical powers. Now, in the original film, she does perform witchcraft. After all, she brews a potion in order to create the poison apple. But in this film, she actually has magical abilities. She can manifest objects in mid-air, and one thing that I thought was kind of dumb is that her magical powers were stemmed from her beauty, which is also why she was so obsessed of being the fairest one of all, because as long as she was the fairest one of all, that is how she was able to hold on to her magic powers. And I thought that was just pretty weird. Not only that, but there were a lot of musical numbers added to the film. Some of the songs from the original film did make its way into this film, and they did change the lyrics a bit. That didn't bother me as much, and there was one new song in particular that I think Rachel Zegler killed, and that is Waiting on a Wish. I actually liked that sequence a lot, but other than that, the other songs were just meh. They were totally forgettable. In fact, this is one of those movies where whenever I feel another song coming on, I feel a sense of dread. They just had no personality to them whatsoever, and it slowed the film down. By the second half of the film, I was actually bored. And you know how a lot of Disney films want to give a signature song to its main villain? Well, in this movie, the evil queen does have a song, and it's bad. In my opinion, I think the evil queen is more formidable when she is given very little to do. And I think giving her this song only diminished her authority. The worst part of this movie is the dwarfs. Now, let me give you a little historical context here. A few years ago, it was reported that Disney had intentions to remove the 7 dwarves in this remake in order to avoid any negative stereotypes. The decision to remove the dwarves from the film sparked a major backlash from not only the people who are fans of the original film, but also from the dwarf community itself. A lot of actors with dwarfism were very much outraged from the fact that Disney was denying them an opportunity to work in a major Hollywood motion picture. Later on, it was reported that Disney went through a series of reshoots, and then we get this production still of Rachel Zegler as Snow White being surrounded by a lot of computer-generated dwarves. Not only did the CGI dwarves look mediocre, I mean, the visual effects weren't bad, but they just feel like they were part of a different movie. And this is where the confusion comes in. There are a lot of conflicting reports being made saying that, oh, Disney did intend to remove the 7 dwarves from the film, but then there are other reporters saying, oh, no, the dwarves were originally meant to be in the film. But then I watched the final product, and honestly, I'm more inclined to believe that these dwarves were never meant to be a part of this film, that they were in fact inserted back into the film in order to avoid any more negative press. And this is what I think harmed the film the most. Even though they inserted the dwarves back into the film, they served absolutely no purpose whatsoever. I mean, when Snow White first comes to their cottage, she befriends them, she teaches them how to work together instead of fighting all the time. But then, by the time you reach the climax of the film, the dwarves did absolutely nothing. The 7 bandits actually did more work than the dwarves. It's a movie that is really struggling to make up its own mind, and it couldn't have been more obvious. How ironic is it that in an attempt to avoid causing any problems, they actually created one for themselves? Once again, I think this is a classic example when a movie studio has become so corporate that they are just so inept at making a creative decision that is logistical and actually serves the story that they are trying to tell. It's not a terrible film, but it's also not a good film either. It's just average. Rachel Zegler is good in the film. Even after watching Snow White, I still believe that she is a truly talented individual. And the production does have quality, but to quote the dinosaur from Meet the Robinsons, I'm not sure how well this plan was thought through. So I'm gonna give Snow White a C-. I think that's fair. Thank you for watching my video, ladies and gentlemen. If you like this video, be sure to subscribe to my channel, and I hope to see you again next time.